my lords. Today, I'm not bringing you a report on the lore of our galaxy, but I feel with the Grand Archive DLC on its way, and with Season 8 finishing, it's a good time to address what the Stellaris player base wishes for the future content updates to Stellaris. I have no prior knowledge of anything going on at Paradox, and this video is entirely speculative on my part. I suspect that 2025 will herald another Season Pass. Given the relative success of the Season 8 Pass, along with Machine Age, it seems sensible to me that we'll see a repeat, probably containing 3 DLCs, just like we've had this year. Again, I suspect that it will follow a similar pattern. There'll be a large expansion akin to Machine Age coming in spring, alongside the release of the Season Pass, which incidentally will help sell it, and then there'll be 2 more smaller expansions near the end of 2025. Thus, in today's report, I intend to cover what you, the community, may be hoping for in the new expansions, what I personally would like, and then arguably how these wishes can be achieved, or at least what I think will actually happen. To help me, I conducted a poll on the channel asking you, the viewers, what you wanted to see from the next DLCs, and I gave you what I thought were some common wishes with the option to comment something else. As of writing, on September the 23rd, 4,100 of you voted, with a majority of 40% wishing for a ground combat rework, 33% wish for a Fallen Empire rework and/or an update, 20% of you wish for the addition of internal Empire politics, and only 5% of you appeared unhappy with the current planetary and pop management and wish for that to be addressed. The final 3% of you either enjoyed poll clicking or wanted something else entirely. But of course the comments contain the real detail. If we delve into them, you can see that there is a huge ask for biological and psionic ascensions to be given the same treatment that synthetics and cybernetics got in Machine Age. The most popular comment on the poll was written by Calamitous Calliope, which stated, "Bioascension rework. It feels awful to use compared to the government types of synth and cyber, the tradition trees mechanical species get, or the covenants that psionics get." I think that this is an extremely fair point, and one that they must address, but more on that later. Wyvernscale 9634 supported the above, stating, "I would personally love to see if psionic and genetic ascensions got updates like what happened for the others in Machine Age. Imagine what kind of government types could be done with a psionic empire. Imagine a genetic empire that went full into biotechnology and exploring that further." And Corin von Draken 1097 also raised hive minds, stating that they would like a hive mind expansion on the level of Machine Age, including bioservitors, galactic gardeners, and bioships. Many comments supported the wish for genetic ascension to be brought up to the same power level, but also filled out in a similar manner to that which cybernetic and synthetic received as part of Machine Age. The wish for psionic ascension and hive minds to be improved were a close second, but they were clearly behind genetic ascension in the wish list. There were also several comments agreeing and wishing for internal politics, i.e. stuff like rebellions requiring a rework, and specifically the frustration that they can magically generate a colossal fleet out of nowhere, being a bugbear. And finally on this poll, despite the technical win for the ground combat, at 40%, many of the commenters were actually quite anti it, stating that ground combat is more or less a minor aspect of the game and it doesn't really need addressing. Of all the wishes on the list, I feel that ground combat is certainly the most controversial, and probably the least likely to get a specific DLC, given that in the round ground combat is actually a fairly minor aspect of the game wouldn't drastically change if ground combat was removed entirely. And it does seem extremely Marmite across the player base. I wonder if Paradox would risk such a controversial expansion, given that they obviously have to sell the DLCs. But we'll see what the future holds. Next, I'll address what I want to see from future DLCs. To do this, I've made a small, non-exhaustive list. Some I feel about stronger than others, but we'll start with the bigger stuff. The bigger stuff starts with New Crisis level events. Zatanna was the first New Crisis that we've had in years, and it was mostly a very enjoyable and successful experience. Certainly from a lore and story perspective, it was quite marvellous, but I do think that fighting her can be quite frustrating, given the hoops that one must jump through to actually get into combat with her, And then on top of that, the Titan design with her armor regeneration is frankly obnoxious, but it is something I can live with. I would like to see 2 more Crisis-style events added. The examples I've come up with are firstly a subterranean-style Crisis, i.e. an attack from the ground up. There is an event in the game that pertains to the fact that a worm-like superweapon is buried deep in every planet across the galaxy. I think it would be extremely cool if these were to wake up one day, or an empire figured out how to control them and activated them. You would have to defend your planet via ground forces, or perhaps sacrifice half of it to an orbital bombardment in order to prevent the planet from falling. This could of course be fleshed out far deeper as required, and it could even be coupled alongside an intergalactic invasion from another galaxy, where they activate the worms and you're fighting on 2 fronts. Nevertheless, I quite like this as a crisis, and of course the lore implications could be very exciting. The second example of a new crisis that I like is massively fleshing out the demonic incursion aspect that can happen via the Knights of the Toxic God origin. I don't think that we have enough psionic or demonic content, and a demonic incursion could be quite marvellous. There's plenty of ways that we could fight it, perhaps a tech to close the portal, or even to enter through the portal and fight them in their realm via a sort of L cluster type subset of systems. And again, there's plenty of lore reasons why this could happen. If a psionic invasion is the preferred over a demonic, then why not return one of the divine Zeroni, who I'm fairly confident are still alive? The Crisis in general alongside the Fallen Empires are one of the most popular topics in the game, and more of this is only going to be a good thing, which brings me next onto updating the Fallen Empires. I think that the Fallen Empires need a drastic update. They are one of my favourite topics, and based on views on the channel, one of your favourite topics as well. I also think given what they represent, they're incredibly underutilised. We found out in Machine Age that Fallen Empires once came together to fight Zatanna, but we know little more than that in reality. I'd like a world in which when Fallen Empires awaken, they're treated as a regular empire in regards to Galcom and diplomacy. Why can I not federate with an awakened Fallen Empire? Why can I not subjugate one if I'm clearly more powerful? The xenophilic Fallen Empire should recognise another xenophilic empire, one which could take their spot as a galactic protector and assist them rather than constantly demanding subjugation. Further to this, the ancient caretakers, they need the ability to be repaired, or perhaps on the flip side, maybe completely corrupted. They are after all simply a machine empire, and there seems to me no reason why we as the player, as a hyper-advanced species, cannot assist them or hurt them further if we wish. Next on my list I have some smaller topics, the first of which would be a style of Stargate-like ground assaults. If we can build gateways in space, then why can't we build gateways on planets, which would allow things like trade and migration to happen through them? But further to this, we could tie in a ground invasion. 99% of planets in Stellaris have little to no military presence on them, other than what the Capitol building provides, which I think is somewhat lacking. If we could attempt to take over a planet via a Stargate-style invasion system, it could add some extra flavour to long drawn-out wars. And talking about wars, I wish for more choice. I.e., if I'm a subjugated empire and I'm locked in a war with my overlord, give me the option to leave the war. Give me the option to turn coat and declare war on my overlord. Allow us to invite empires to ongoing wars, and equally allow empires to peace out separately during wars. If I want to leave a federation that's at war with another federation, why can I not do that? My empire should be allowed to make its own choices, and if I have to face the consequences for that choice, that's fine, but ultimately it's my choice to make. Next, I'll touch on some more quality of life bits that I'd like to see added to the game. I'd like to see starbase designs, or rather templates, added to the game. 90% of my starbases in every single game look exactly the same, and yet I must click anchorage 6 times and hydroponics, etc, etc. Please just let me set it to the template and it can auto-upgrade as I wish. Further to this, we as players tend to use the same ship designs every game. Perhaps allow us to set this in the Empire Creation menu, or a method of just auto-saving templates from previous games to save me the repeat job of adding cruisers with whirlwind missiles and afterburners every single game. Lastly, on the quality of life changes, please let us have free text boxes to type a number for endgame and mid-game start dates, opposed to a slider. If I want to set the endgame at 2200, please let me do this. Or if I want to set it at 2203, please let me do this. Don't lock it behind a slider. My final point on additions that I would like added to the game: more Leviathans and/or Guardians. Events of course get added with every patch, and frankly I have no real complaints here. I love the new events, I feel like they make the galaxy bigger. I do however think that we are due a new wave of Leviathans and/or Guardians. In reality, there's actually not that many big hitters that can spawn into the game. Even on a huge galaxy, you're likely to get 5 or less, and even then they're not guaranteed. I would like to see another 5 to 10 big, nasty space creatures added, and I'd also like a world where you need 500,000 fleet power to take them down. They shouldn't be so accessible to mid-game empires. And now onto the final chapter of this video. What do I actually think is coming in 2025? So as I stated at the start of the video, given the success of Machine Age, I think it's extremely likely that we will see genetic ascension addressed in some sort of mechanical expansion early in 2025, alongside a season pass. I would expect the design of this expansion to be similar to that of Machine Age. We will see several new biological themed origins and civics, perhaps one similar to Overtuned but locked into genetic modifications, perhaps a variation of a clone uprising, perhaps an empire obsessed with genetic mutation and disease. There are plenty of possibilities. But I would hope within this that we see biological ships and living megastructures, and that hives will get a benefit from this biological focused DLC, perhaps even a subset of ascensions, similar to virtuality and modularity, etc. Given that different hive minds view and operate in the galaxy quite uniquely, it wouldn't hurt for the ascensions to be addressed in a similar way. A devouring swarm or a terravore is rather obviously very different to a life-seeded, empathic, mycorrhizal ideal, and I think perhaps the ascension paths should reflect this. I think an organic ship set has to be included, given that we already have a civic stating that we use food to create ships, and I think organic ship sets are something that hive minds should innately already have access to, or at least certain types of hives. I would hope for an aggressive looking organic ship set coupled with one that is perhaps more placid and fitting for different playstyles. I also wouldn't mind a world where these are unique for hive minds, with the further addition of a biological ship set for normal organic empires if they pursued a particular genetic ascension route. The final thing to touch on that may be addressed in a biological expansion may also be the idea that a machine empire, specifically an individualist one, but perhaps maybe Gestal also, would be able to attempt to ascend into flesh and blood and give up their machine form, bringing ascension full circle, if you will. If we see a biological expansion in the early 2025, I would guess that we would expect to see a smaller species pack style DLC in Q3, and then perhaps a story pack in Q4. There has always been rumblings for a gaseous species or an energy-based species. Both are popular tropes, although I'm sure that there are plenty more on a list somewhere at Paradox HQ. Personally, I'd love to see some sort of demonic species pack, or a species pack full of tiny organisms creating larger organisms, similar to the Hunters from Halo. I think species packs allow for lots of extra customization and give us some great civics and origins, and importantly, good trailers and songs. And bearing all that in mind, the last species pack we had was back in September 2022, so we are due one. The final DLC of 2025, I would hope for and expect would be a story pack. Story packs are in my opinion the most important type of DLC, as they fill out the galaxy and make it an exciting place to explore. I think that we need to increase the amount of space fauna and leviathans, as I mentioned earlier, and I also find it quite interesting that 2 new precursors were added with Cosmic Storms, when I had it on good authority that there were no plans to add these several years ago. As you know, I love the precursors, and I'd love to see more. I'd also perhaps like to see a method of gaining more than one precursor storyline per game. For example, why can we not discover all 9 stories if no one else gets there first? But no, I don't think you should choose your precursor in the Empire creation screen. And that brings my thoughts to a close. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as ever, if you want to hear more from me, please click the video on screen now.